Hi poetry lovers, welcome to my channel Bella Poetry Presents. In our few previous segments we discussed international romantic poets like the German romantic poets Friedrich Schiller and Goethe, his best friend, and then we talked about Victor Hugo, who was a French romantic poet, but not just poet, but a very known and beloved novelist, French novelist. And today we will talk about an Italian romantic poet, and his name was Giacomo Leopardi, and here his picture. So let's start from the beginning. We'll explore today the work and the life of Giacomo Leopardi, one of the most profound and introspective poets of the 19th century. Though he lived a short and often very difficult life, his poetry continues to touch readers with its beauty, depth, and emotional honesty. Giacomo Leopardi was born on June 29, 1798, in Recanati, a small town in Italy. He came from a noble but financially struggling family. His father, Count Monaldo Leopardi, was very conservative, while his mother was strict and emotionally unavailable. Leopardi was a child prodigy. He spent many hours in his father's library. By the age of 10, he had already mastered Latin, Greek, and later taught himself Hebrew, French, and philosophy. However, his intense self-education came at a cost. He spent long hours studying alone in his father's library, which damaged his health and left him physically fragile. He suffered from chronic illness, poor eyesight, and a hunched posture. You can even see in his portrait that I just showed you in the beginning of the segment that he was a slight man, very pale, so he had all kinds of different ailments. He suffered, by the way, his poor eyesight was because he had to read by the candlelight, and it definitely affected his eyesight. Despite his brilliance, Leopardi longed to escape the small town of Recanati and experience the wide world. He later lived in cities like Rome, Florence, and Naples, but often felt disappointed and disconnected, because it's not about the place, it's about a person. Let's discuss a little bit Leopardi's professional life. We know that we discussed already that Leopardi is considered one of the greatest poets of the Romantic era, though his philosophy is often more pessimistic than his contemporaries. His most important work is the collection of poems, which is actually called Canti, songs, which include some of his most famous work. He also wrote philosophical reflections in a type of a personal journal which is called Zibaldone. It is a notebook filled with thoughts on life, nature, illusion, and human suffering. Leopardi wrote over 4,500 pages in Zibaldone. The Zibaldone was kept by Giacomo Leopardi between 1817 and 1834. The word Zibaldone in Italian means jumble, and that is exactly what it is, a collection of thoughts, reflections, observations, and philosophical ideas. Now, the key themes that Leopardi explored in his poetry are the illusion of happiness, the indifference of nature, the loneliness of human existence, and the tension between hope and despair. Leopardi believed that humans naturally seek happiness, but the world cannot truly provided. Yet, he also believed in the beauty of imagination and poetry as a kind of comfort. Well, let's talk a little bit about his life, I would say, of unfulfilled love. Obviously, a lot of his poetry is about love, but Giacomo Leopardi's romantic love was not a story of fulfilled love, but rather one of longing, imagination, and emotional distance. His experience, or more accurately, his lack of experience in the matters of romance deeply shaped the tone of his poetry. Leonardi never married and is not known to have had a lasting romantic relationship. His physical frailty, chronic illness, and social isolation made it difficult for him to form close emotional bonds. Living much of his life in the quiet town of Recanati in the beginning, he often observed life from a distance rather than participating in it. Yet the distance did not diminish his capacity for love. It intensified it. He wanted to love. He wanted to be loved. Leopardi became a poet of imagined love, where desire, hope, and illusion play central roles. Now, I want to mention here a girl that Leopardi dedicated some of his poetry. He called her Sylvia. She was the symbol of his lost youth that he often mentioned and discussed in his poetry. So Sylvia was a young woman, and she inspired his famous poem, one of his famous poets, titled A Sylvia. Sylvia was based on a real girl whose name was Teresa Fattorini. She was the daughter of Leopardi's coachman, but unfortunately she died young, and in Leopardi's poetry she becomes a symbol of youth and innocence, dreams that never come true, the fragility of hope. In the poem, Leopardi does not describe a fulfilled love, but rather a love that never had the chance to exist, and it's actually a powerful reflection of his own life. And that's why he is often called a poet of infinite longing. Despite his pessimism, his poetry is filled with lyrical beauty and emotional warmth. Unfortunately, Leopardi died young. He died at the age of 38 years old in Naples in 1837. Now we're going to read a few poems. I am reading just excerpts from his poems. His poetry is very long. So the first one is called L'Infinito, the Infinite. And this is perhaps Leopardi's most famous poem, reflecting on imagination and the boundless nature of thought. And this is a little excerpt from this poem. Always dear to me was the solitary hill, and this hedge which from so much of the horizon excludes the father's gaze, but sitting and gazing boundless spaces beyond it, and superhuman silences and deepest quiet I imagine in my thoughts. So again, the word imagine, his imagination, his love of nature, and at the same time the pessimism that the nature sometimes causes him to feel. So let's go to another poem, and this poem is the one that we discussed. It's called A Sylvia, the poem that he dedicated to his, so to speak, almost imaginary love that never got fulfilled to this girl. It's a deeply emotional poem of unfulfilled dreams. Sylvia, do you remember that time in your mortal life, when beauty shone in your eyes and you, joyous and thoughtful, were climbing the threshold of youth. So in this poem, Sylvia represents hope and youth, both of which fade very quickly. It is a meditation on lost illusions. So in conclusion, I can say about Giacomo Leopardi that his life was filled with hardship, but his poetry transformed suffering into beauty. His words remind us of the fragility of happiness, the power of imagination, and the deep emotional complexity of being human. Even today, his voice feels modern, honest, questioning, and deeply reflective. And I will read you another kind of longer excerpt from one of his poems. I decided to choose just a part of it because it is also extremely long. And the poem is called To His Lady. Beloved beauty, who inspires love in me from afar, your face obscured, except when your celestial image stirs my heart in sleep, or in the fields where light and nature's laughter shine more lovely. Was it maybe you who blessed the innocent age called golden? And do you now, blithe spirit, fly among men? Or does that miser fate, who hides you from us to save you for the future? No hope of seeing you alive remains for me now, except when naked and alone, my soul will go down a new street to its unknown home. Already at the dawn of my dark, uncertain day, I imagined you a fellow traveler on this arid ground, but there is no thing that resembles you on earth. And if someone had a face like yours, in act and word she be, though something like you, far less beautiful. In spite of all the suffering fate decreed for human time, if there were anyone on earth who truly loved you, as my thought depicts you, this life for him would be a blessing. And I suspect that this poem was dedicated to the daughter of a coachman who unfortunately passed too young, and whose love story with Giacomo Leopardi did not realize. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this segment. Again, I'm showing you the picture of Giacomo Leopardi. And please don't forget to like and subscribe to hear new segments, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye-bye.